This is Ryan Hubbard, and I am currently not in the Hubbard's Handmade Shop. I'm at a place called Avery Park near my home in Corvallis, Oregon. And the reason that I'm here is that I recently found that Corvallis had to trim parts of a walnut tree that has been here since the city of Corvallis, then called Marysville, was originally founded 140 years ago. There are 4 of these walnut trees that were originally planted by the founder of Corvallis. And they've had to come in and trim a lot of trees, as well as these black walnut trees. One of these branches that was trimmed off was turned into live edge slabs, and I'm going to make a live edge table. You might be able to tell that this is not the tree that my slabs came from, but it is one of the original walnut trees that was planted 140 years ago. Just an amazing example of the species. I'm very excited to have this project. So throughout this video, I want to give you the story of this tree so far and the process that I went through to make it into the table that it is today. I have these oriented right now top to top, so the book match is going to go like this, and this is the area that's going to have epoxy in it. Somehow when these were sliced, this one ended up with a straight edge while this one still has the live edge, and I really want that live edge so that I can put the epoxy there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my jigsaw and angle grinder and kind of fake it a little bit to make these edges match so that when it's put together they look more symmetrical and actually book matched. I don't want to take off too much material because I'll just have to fill it with epoxy, and epoxy is expensive. So I'm just going to take it down a little bit. I'm not going to cut the whole area away, and then when it's covered with the black epoxy, you won't be able to tell anyways. "15 years before Oregon would become a state in 1859, Joseph C. Avery and his wife Martha immigrated from Illinois to what was then the Oregon country. In 1847, Avery began laying out a town at the confluence of Marys River and the Willamette River, and called the place Marysville. I'm about ready to cut some bow ties into my slab, and I just made a couple of these templates just based exactly on the size of the bow ties that I have, and I cut them out on the bandsaw, and I just made sure that I was inside the line so they would be just a little bit smaller. So I'm just going to use my router to remove the bulk of the bow tie, and then I'll use my chisels to get right up to the line. So that's just going to go right over there. Set these aside and follow that pattern with my white side router bit. There's a link in the description below to this white side router bit that I like a lot. And this one's not ready, but this one is already stuck down with some good double-sided tape, so that's not going anywhere. In 1848, Avery had heard about the California gold rush, and he decided to go to California to try his hand at gold mining. He only stayed long enough to fill a wagon with mercantile goods from his gold profits and bring it back to Oregon, where he used it to open a store. Over the next several years, Avery would be instrumental in mapping the land, serving as the first postmaster for the community, and finally as legislator in the Provisional Oregon government. In 1853, with the consent of the fledgling Oregon legislature, Avery changed the name of the town of Marysville to Corvallis to avoid confusion with Marysville, California. He had coined the name Corvallis by compounding Latin words meaning heart of the valley. Shortly before his death, Joseph planted 4 walnut trees to mark the corners of his Corvallis holdings. These trees were a hybrid of black and English walnut, also known as paradox walnut, and are renowned for their relatively fast growth, beautiful patterns, and figured grain. Two of the walnut trees are still alive today, and in order to recognize them as historic landmarks, they have been named heritage trees by the Benton County Heritage Tree Program. Part of the land that he settled and planted his walnut trees is now 75-acre Avery Park in fertile, picturesque Corvallis, Oregon. It's only a couple minutes later, and I got worried that my epoxy was running out of the sides where it might not make a nice seal up against the form here. I put some weights on here to hold the slab down, and then I'm adding some clamps onto the ends. I don't have a clamp that long, so I'm combining some clamps to hold the slab against the ends. We're at about 40 hours, 48 hours, something like that. So it's time for the second pour. My wife and I took a drive up to Creative Woodworking Northwest in Portland, Oregon, where they have two of these amazing wide belt sanders, and they can handle slabs or tabletops up to a 50-inch capacity. And it was just super simple to have them flatten this slab. It only took 20 minutes. That would have taken me 2 days worth of work to get both sides of the table flat. On August 15th, 2015, a local arbor company donated their time to thin out some of the branches and add some wire supports to the 140-year-old tree, which had lost one of its 3 main trunks years earlier and was therefore unbalanced. One of the branches removed that day was large enough that they decided to have it turned into slab lumber. These slabs were then kiln dried and sold to recoup some of the cost of the operation. The 3 slabs used on this table were, of course, from that tree. One of the consequences of flattening the slab at this point is that it always reveals these tiny gaps and cracks where epoxy didn't flow. So using a expired needle, I filled in a lot of these cracks as best I could. had to overcome one or two problems along the way when I was working on this table. And at this point, I thought that the finish was going to look absolutely beautiful, but turns out that some of those tiny little gaps and cracks were a real problem. Alright, well, the bottom line is I am not happy with the finish, I'm not happy with the results. You can see in the light a lot of little spots, some streaking, and some pitting and stuff there. I'm going to sand it back, do my best to fill all those spots, and then refinish it. To be perfectly honest with you, this was extremely painful for me to scrape and sand back all of this finish that I had put literally days of work into. But the bottom line is that it needed to be done, and I would not have felt comfortable with selling this table knowing that it was not the best finish that I could put on it. So here I am applying Osmo, and it's my first time using it, but it turned out a lot better than I could have even hoped for. A lot better than the finish that I had on there, so I'm really glad in the end that I fixed that. To assemble the table, I started with these threaded inserts on the slab that is the cross piece across the bottom of the table, and then attached the legs, and then moved that whole assembly over to the bottom of the slab that is the tabletop. Under the tabletop, I did 8 more of these threaded inserts and then attached the whole assembly, and I had to get help from my wife and my son to move this table off of the workbench. It is extremely heavy. I'm just plain honored to have been able not only to make this table from the slabs of such a significant tree, but to have even been made aware of its history in the first place. I feel just blessed and humbled to be able to impart some of my talent to this project, and I'm pleased to pass on the history of this tree, about its planter and the area where the tree can still be found growing. So for all of these reasons and all of its history, I've chosen to call this project the Avery Table. Thank you for watching my video. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and if you're interested in learning more about this table or the other projects that I'm working on, please check out my stuff at hubbardshandmade.com. See you next time.